I'd like you to just take a moment to take a look at this picture. I'm sure that we are all aware of what happened on this day. But what I'd like you to do, sorry, can everyone hear me correctly? Would you like me to use the mic?
Please, Mike.
Testing. What I'd like you to do is to think back at the thoughts that went through your mind when you first, as a Muslim, heard about this incident. Now, if the thoughts that go through your mind resemble those on this screen, ask yourself, why? Why is it that almost every Muslim felt this way? And ask yourself, is this normal? And now ask yourself a question. Is it normal to respond the way we did? Was it normal to feel the way we did? In that moment, when we felt pressured, when we felt snowed under, when we felt a sense of shame, a sense of fear. Was that normal? Was it normal that every time we watched the television and someone from the Muslim community stood up and announced that this had nothing to do with Islam, that as Muslims we strongly condemn this act being committed in our name, did we feel that sense of relief? Did we feel that burden on our chest lift a little? In a way, you felt a sense of shame. You felt like you were responsible for an act, weirdly enough, that you had nothing to do with. In a way, every bone in your body was aching to jump up and cry that Islam was about peace, that killing one life is equal to killing all of mankind. Isn't that how the majority of the Muslim community responded? And didn't we use the very titles given to us by our oppressors to divide us into two parties? Didn't we shout the term moderate Muslim? Didn't we wear it around our necks? I mean, what is a moderate Muslim? Since when has our identity gone from being just Muslim to a moderate Muslim or an extreme Muslim? Because I don't remember my ancestors having to define themselves like that. Do you? Do you remember the Prophet defining himself like that? Now, I want you to take a moment and just reflect on this. Reflect on your reaction, our reaction as a community, and if this is normal. If you think that it is, and if you think there's nothing wrong with such a reaction, then let's now compare this reaction to the reaction of another community when a terrorist attack occurred. Muhammad Salim Chowdhury from Birmingham was on his way home from the masjid after his Isha namaz, when he was stabbed to death by Islamophobes just yards away from his house. Can I ask you guys a question? Can I have a raise of hands, please? How many people heard about this? And how many of us heard of the Woolwich attack? If you just look around the room for the numbers, does it not prove the double standards of our media and what they choose to tell us about? But it also shows the double standards of our leaders and our imams and what they choose to tell us about in their khutbahs. Because they did tell us, didn't they, about the Woolwich attack. They did condemn that. Now, we all know the EDL, I'm sure, undoubtedly racist, Islamophobic organisation that's proven to be intolerant and violent, particularly towards us Muslims. Now, when this attack, and I'm going to say a terrorist attack, occurred, how did they react as a community? Because after all, the EDL claimed to represent all English people and speak on behalf of them. So then did the English people as a community say, oh no, I hope it's not the EDL again? Did they as a community say, oh no, because of what the EDL have done, we English people are now going to be under attack or under pressure in the media? What about when our mosques were being burnt to the ground in Muswell Hill? How did the English community then react? Did they come out as a community feeling a sense of responsibility for something that they had nothing to do with? Did they make sure that they created YouTube videos about this attack? Did they make sure that they put up statuses on Facebook denouncing what had happened? Did they make sure that they delivered sermons condemning what had happened? No, of course not. I mean, why would they, right? But now ask yourself, brothers and sisters, why? Why is it that they react like this and we react differently? Is it because their reaction is abnormal, or is there more to it?
Well, maybe there is more to it. Maybe this is because Islam teaches us to value human life, regardless of who it is. And maybe we reacted the way we did because as a community, we denounce the loss of life. And we know that we must act against it. Right? And that's why we reacted the way we did in the Woolwich attack. Because that's what Islam teaches us, right? You are the best community that has been raised for mankind. You enjoin good and forbid evil. So let's see. Let's see if we react like this in all situations. Let's see if this argument, if this reason that I put forward to you is actually the case. When you look at this image, what is the first thing that goes through your mind? Terrible, right? This image could be from a number of Muslim countries, but this is from Palestine. And this is our mother in Islam, murdered by Israeli terrorism. And this right here is her child, who would not stop crying until he was placed beside his mother. And even when he was placed beside her, he just sat there waiting for his dead mother to get up and hold him. So tell me, how did we react when we saw our child in Palestine get a bullet blown through their chest? How did we respond as a community? Did we feel that sense of shame? Did we feel that sense of responsibility? Did every bone in our body jump up to condemn this act? Did we stand up and shout that killing one life is equal to killing all of mankind? Surely, if Muslims, as a community, if we value life, the majority of our community must have reacted this way, right? I wish that was the case. But unfortunately, as a community, we failed to act.
And if you don't believe us, I want you to just think about this point now. When that attack occurred in Woolwich, why is it that Muslim leaders from all around the world galvanised and mobilised to condemn what had happened? YouTube videos were created on that same day, denouncing what had happened and proclaiming Islam is peace. Facebook statuses were put up straight away, weren't they? Our Jummah khutbahs for weeks to come denounced what had happened, discussing the issue, making sure the world knew Islam is peace. But what about the Bosnian genocide? When 8,000 plus Muslim brothers were lined up in Srebrenica and massacred, where was the worldwide condemnation then and mobilisation then from our leaders? Where were the YouTube videos then denouncing what had happened, demanding that our ummah take action? Where were our Jummah khutbahs then, telling our congregation and our people how to stop this injustice? Let me tell you a story. Inayat Banglawala, a prominent member of MCB, actually told us that when he went to his Friday Jummah khutbah, the Imam was teaching and speaking about how much urine is allowed to go onto your garments before they become impure. So during the time when thousands and thousands of Muslims were being killed and slaughtered in Bosnia, this is what our leaders were speaking about? This is what we were prioritising? When our brothers weren't even given graves to lie in. And they were just piled up, one on top of the other, like rubbish. And as a community, we failed to react to such an extent that when our sisters were being raped in Bosnia, they had to send a public letter to us Muslims in the West. And they had to beg us. And they begged us and they said to us that if you can't stop this rape, and if you can't stop this genocide, then at least send us contraception so we don't have to give birth to our rapist child. How? How could this be? And how could we as a community allow this when we as a community proclaim that we enjoin the right and forbid the evil? How? How could this be when we as a community say that we condemn all injustices and we really sacred, and our lives are really sacred? How? How could it be that when our brothers were being shipped off to Guantanamo Bay to be electrocuted, force-fed, imprisoned without trial, that pretty much as a community we did nothing? Collectively we did nothing. I mean, surely, come on, we must have organised ourselves to do something, right? Because we did organise ourselves when the EDL came marching to our mosques ready to attack us. We organised ourselves enough to give them tea and biscuits, did we? Surely we must have organised ourselves then for our brothers in Guantanamo Bay.
No, we did not. As a community, we failed to act. When it came to our own people, we were deaf, dumb, and blind. But don't you find this strange? How strange that when a Muslim commits an immoral act of murder, we unite as one community and denounce this act. We disassociate ourselves. Suddenly, we become a people of moral caliber that value human life. that denounce immoral acts. But when an immoral act is committed against an innocent Muslim, then we say nothing. Just think for a moment. Isn't this strange? How strange is it that the same community that champions the noble chant, killing one life is equal to killing all of mankind, abandons this very slogan when it comes to its own people? When it comes to an innocent Muslim becoming a victim of someone else's terrorism. But how can this be? How can we have two polar opposite reactions from the same community? How? Next slide. And how can we say, after knowing this, that our reaction to the murder of Lee Rigby was because we were a sincere people, wanting to denounce an act of injustice, when we have never mobilized against other injustices being committed against us as a community? Surely there is another reason that explains our reaction to what happened in Woolwich. Surely, behind these slogans that we were shouting, there was an underlying truth. A truth so terrifying that when it crumbles upon us, we will deny it. We will try to make excuses. But deep down in our subconscious mind, we will know it for what it is. The truth that tells us that we are nothing but slaves dressed in outward glitter. I really hope you don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We live comfortably. We have nice clothes to wear. We live in great homes. But deep in our subconscious, we have no value for ourselves. We have no respect, no dignity. We are subservient. We feel inferior. We are always afraid. We are always afraid. Afraid for when we will be labelled extreme again. And we don't condemn terrorism because it's wrong. We condemn it because we are cowards, because we are scared for our lives and we are scared of being hated. We are afraid of our oppressors, just like a slave is afraid of its master. And if you don't believe me, have a look at this quote that I came across when I was reading Francis Fukuyama. A quote that tells us the relationship between a human being's value for themselves and their reaction. Socrates suggests that a relationship between anger and self-esteem by explaining that a nobler a man is, that is, the more highly he evaluates his own worth, the more angry he will become when he has been dealt with unjustly. When have we ever become angry at the injustices that have taken place against us? People believe that they have a certain worth, and when other people act as though they are worth less, when they do not recognize their worth at its correct value, then they become angry. And I just want you to think about this. Think about Willett through a new perspective. Think about this quote. Think about how a normal human being that has worth reacts. A slave is afraid of its master's reaction. So when the bad slave on the plantation does something wrong, so that all the other slaves don't get punished for it as well, these slaves rush up to the master, proving how good they are, proving how obedient they are to the master. And isn't that exactly what we did? That is what we did. We behaved just like slaves. And when our people were being butchered, raped in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Burma, in Palestine, in Chechnya, of course we, the slaves, would not condemn our oppressors for committing such acts of injustice. That would be the slave condemning its master. How strange. Why would a slave ever dare to condemn its master? And that's why we never condemned the master. And it did not matter how many acts of injustice were perpetrated, how many inhumane acts were perpetrated against us as a people. We behaved just like slaves, unworthy, inferior, and subservient.
But it didn't just stop there. Not only had we become slaves, but we had accepted our slavery to such an extent that when our people were bombed and burnt alive, the more they were shot, the more we were bombed, the more we said, Islam is peace, I'm a moderate Muslim. The more they called your religion barbaric and violent, the more you said, Islam is peace. The more they called you an Islamist, a terrorist, for having grievances of your dying ummah, because that is what Boris Johnson called us, didn't he, a few months ago, the louder your silence became. So the more they bombed you, droned you, shot you, raped your sisters, the more you apologised for being a Muslim. It was madness. Madness that the wolf was complaining that the sheep had horns. And that sheep was too busy trying to rub those horns away and convince the world that it wasn't dangerous, that it wasn't an extremist. It was peaceful. It was harmless. All whilst the wolf continued to plot and conspire for the herd's genocide. Let me show you the reaction of a free human being. Take a look at him. He's just a child, isn't he? But he values his life and the lives of his people. So much so, and to such an extent, that he would willingly go up against his oppressor and resist. Even if he's armed with nothing but a stone, he will resist. You see, he knows his story, and he rejects the story of his oppressor that tells the world that he's nothing but a terrorist. Instead, he chooses to tell the world the truth, his story, that he's just a child, oppressed, and he's resisting his oppression, he's fighting for his freedom. The Palestinians may be, no, I take that back. The Palestinians are undoubtedly the most oppressed community in the world. Yet, psychologically, they are free. Look at this boy's reaction. This is not abnormal. This is the reaction of a free human being. I mean, tell me, Some of us may think this is madness. I mean, who would willingly go up against a tank with a stone, right? The answer is simple. A free human being. Physically, yes, he's oppressed. But the Palestinians refuse to be slaves. They refuse to allow this oppression to continue, and they will always be ideologically free. You see, the physically oppressed may have chains around their hands, but they have no chains on their minds. Whereas us, we may not be physically oppressed, but psychologically, our minds are. I mean, how else could we explain our reactions to incidents like Woolwich? Surely it's that of an oppressed mind. And so long as the mind is enslaved, our body can never be free. But Allah Himself says to us in the Quran, "And what is wrong with you that you fight not in the cause of Allah and of those who, being weak, are ill-treated and oppressed, men, women, children, whose cry is, 'Our Lord, rescue us from this town,' whose people are oppressors, and rescue and raise for us from thee one who will protect, and raise for us from thee one who will help." So Allah Himself asks us, what is wrong with us? Why do we react so abnormal, so slave-like? Where does this come from? Because we weren't always like this. We have such a glorious history. Golden era of Islam. Our ancestors laid the foundations of modern civilization as we know it. So, where does this abnormal behaviour come from? Because it doesn't come from Islam. Our next speaker, Mehdi, will give us an insightful explanation and delve into this now. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.